We are talking about the Employee Free Choice Act, a piece of legislation that's currently going through Capitol Hill right now, that the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and a number of other business groups, I guess probably all business groups, are pretty much against at this point. You were saying, Dan, am I reading this right, that the main sticking point with you right now isn't so much the elections, although that's a big deal, but it's the binding arbitration, right?
It's the binding arbitration. We've expected all along for labor to drop the attack on the secret ballot, which that gets people, that gets their dander up. I mean, that's a foundation of our whole system, is to be able to vote in secret, vote the way you want without any intimidation. So we fully expected them to drop that to make it seem more friendly and more acceptable. And if you notice, the senators like Arlen Specter and the other ones that have bailed on this legislation and have said, I'm against it in its current form. So there's still play out there, but we expected them to drop that somewhere in the process to get it through the Senate.
President back on the stump on Capitol Hill for his health care overhaul plan. I'm sure Missouri Chamber, National Chamber are taking a close look at that, because health care for your constituents is right there at the head of the list.
Absolutely. It's a major cost driver. You're seeing still double-digit rate ups every year a lot of times when you renew your health care. And what this would do would be to drive people towards this public option type of an approach. But the cost of this thing is finally getting widely played, and it is a deal breaker. They're no longer talking in millions of the cost of these things. It's billions and trillions. So if you want to see a real cost driver, the U.S. Chamber has put out some great information on what this would do to the healthcare delivery system. Hospitals are concerned about it. Providers are concerned about it. The fact is, more than about 2/3 of the population get their insurance from an employer, from somehow the employer benefit package, and this would make it extremely difficult to do, which would drive people towards that public option. I will say, though, there's a lot of employers out there that will tell you, if I could drop having to provide health care coverage, I'd do it in a heartbeat, because it's so costly. It cuts into their bottom line.
Let's try it again for Dan Mehan here of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. Good morning. Welcome to Open Air on KWOS.
Hi. I just had a question about the card check bill that you guys were talking about.
About the what?
Card check?
Oh,
the card check.
Right, yeah.
And I was just wondering, because my parents own a small business, how does that affect people that have built small businesses? What does that mean when they come in and do something like that?
Thank you for your call, Dan.
One of the goals of this legislation is to make it easier to organize a small business into a collective bargaining unit. When you think of a union shop, typically you think of a larger employer with a larger workforce. But what this does, it brings into the crosshairs small businesses like retailers, restaurants, convenience stores, you name it. Typically that labor left alone, but the economy is so driven by people like your parents and them taking the risk to open a small business and run it, and that labor needs to expand its scope and try to get into those smaller employers. So with the Employee Free Choice Act, if let's say you had a clerks in your store, they could organize into their own collective bargaining unit. I like the joke that our lobbyists could organize into a collective bargaining unit at the Missouri Chamber. But you're in the target hairs here, and that's one of the goals of the legislation.
I see.
Any follow-up on that, caller?
So it seems like you lose a lot of control over your company once this happens, then.
Absolutely. It's all about control when a labor union comes in and they negotiate the wage rates, the benefits, the working hours, the conditions, those types of things that typically in a small business you absolutely need flexibility to be able to compete, and this takes a lot of that away.
Ask you really quick here, Dan, before you go, about cap and trade. That's some more legislation. Man, we've talked about every business group in the world about this. Nobody is very happy about this. Congressman Luke DeMeyer, very much opposed to it. Your take on that?
If you think card checks bad, this kills us, especially in the Midwest. If 85% of our power comes from coal-fired plants, and basically you have to offset somehow your amount of energy that you buy. So if you're a manufacturer, if you're dependent on power in any way, you're going to have to find a way to offset that. The offset will come in increased costs, increased prices that we all pay, but we're going to feel it at home first with our electric bills and our gas bills and these types of things. So the cap and trade is a whole another chapter of what this Congress is doing that is completely off the charts, and it's especially injurious to the Midwest.
Well, I think everybody wants a clean environment and a cleaner environment. Based on the conversations I've had about this, part of the problem is to get some of the other nations on board with this. If China and India aren't going to do this, then the jobs are going to go right there.
You're absolutely right. It's unilateral disarmament. They have, as China and India in particular, have said, we will not do this. We will not do that to thwart our own growth. And the U.S. can't be out there just surrendering our jobs to China, India, elsewhere in the world, that places that don't have these restrictions and these increased costs to doing business. It is truly a global economy, and the jobs will go where the environment can welcome them.
Dan Mehan is president of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce, joining us this morning on KWOS Open Air. Dan, always a pleasure having you on. Appreciate the
Thank you very much. Anytime.
You bet.